What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live for day one of NFL free agency. Live news, live analysis, and reaction. I'm going to react to all the news that I missed, and we're also going to react to anything that breaks here tonight. I'm going to try to stay as long as humanly possible here tonight, so make sure you fill up that chat with a ton of questions. Let's get a great vibe going here live on the BLV. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button if you're joining or you're joining this after the fact. Appreciate you tuning in and appreciate you watching. Going to discuss a lot of football, a lot of different players, and break down how these players fit your favorite team and whether or not I like the contract and I like the signing and the fit for each and every signing. So let's get to it, man. Let's get to it. Gronk spike the like button. Let's waste no more time. Let's get to it. The first thing I want to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals. That's the first thing I want to talk about. The Cincinnati Bengals have now lost both of their starting safeties today. They lost Vonn Bell to the Carolina Panthers, and they lost Jessie Bates to the Cincinnati Bengals. Those are two key players. I expected them to at least lose one of those players, but I did not expect them to lose both of those players. Now, they did re-sign Jermaine Pratt, who everyone thought was the least likely to come back. It is interesting that they basically chose Jermaine Pratt over Vonn Bell, given the size of both contracts. That is basically what I'm inferring from both of the contracts there. Jessie Bates is a different story. He went for major money to the Atlanta Falcons. So let's begin with the Jessie Bates signing, which is arguably the biggest signing of the day. Jessie Bates signed a 4-year, $64 million deal. He gets $23 million in year one, and it's a 4-year deal with about $16 million per year. That is the fourth highest paid safety in NFL history with that contract. Jessie Bates is an excellent football player. And one of the biggest needs the Atlanta Falcons had was safety. Free safety, deep safety, the lurker, the rangy guy. And there are none better in the sport right now at being the deep free safety, rangy safety, sideline to sideline than Jessie Bates. There's a very short list. There are a lot of guys that are maybe more versatile. There are some guys that are better tacklers. There's some guys that are better run defenders. But there's very few free safeties that are great in the deep area of the field at being the last man of defense. There are very few that are better than Jessie Bates. There might not be any better than Jessie Bates. He's a playmaker. He can take the football away. He can create big time contact. When the ball gets there to a receiver, you see Jessie Bates fly into the screen and just smack that receiver. Ball flies out of bounds. He is responsible for those deep completions, and the Bengals have been very good at not allowing them. Now he's going to have that role in Atlanta. The Atlanta defense needs safety play because they've now resorted, or I wouldn't call it resorted, but they have taken from the New Orleans Saints. They've taken their defensive line coach and made him the defensive coordinator. And in New Orleans, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they've had some pretty darn good safeties over the years. Right? They had Malcolm Jenkins. They had the guy that got paid a ton of money, Marcus Williams, the Baltimore Ravens. They've had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They now signed, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May the last couple of years. They've needed safety play. Safety play is very important to that defense. So it's a priority for them that Jessie Bates was their guy. And Jessie Bates, as I predicted, would go to Atlanta because he has a relationship with some of the players on the team already. Seems like a great fit there, great personality. He is a guy that's won some games. He can be a leader of this defense in the secondary, be the guy with the dot on his helmet that can get that secondary situated and This is why the Patriots wanted him, or Patriots fans, I should say, wanted him, is because he reminds a lot of them of Devin McCourty. And that is the player that he reminds me the most of. A really good leader, a vocal guy, but also, a heck of a football player. That sometimes he doesn't show up on the stat sheet because he's not the guy near the line of scrimmage. So you're not going to see Jessie Bates racking up a ton of tackles. Some games you may not even hear his name. But sometimes when you don't hear his name, that might be a good thing because that means you're not giving up big completions down the field. So Jessie Bates is one of those types of players that is an unsung hero for a lot of defenses, and defensive coordinators across the NFL have recognized how talented he is with this contract. So Atlanta gets an excellent football player, one of the best safeties in the game, one of the best free safeties in the sport for big money, but he definitely deserves it. So congrats to Falcons fans, and congrats to Jessie Bates on that contract. When it comes to Vonn Bell, and guys, I will get to all of your questions and comments very soon. I'm not going to leave you hanging. Don't worry. I'm just going to continue to go through this news, and whatever sparks the conversation, I'm going to keep going with it. But Vonn Bell, that was surprising to me that Vonn Bell did not come to Cincinnati. And once I saw the contract, which was just released about 40 minutes ago, I was shocked even more so, because I expected if Vonn Bell was going to leave, it would probably be for more money than anticipated. But Vonn Bell's a really good player. Like, Vonn Bell is a very well-rounded safety. So in Cincinnati, you had Jessie Bates, who was that kind of like free safety roamer guy, right? As we just discussed. You had Vonn Bell, who is the box safety, but he was good at dropping into coverage, but also great in the run game. So he was responsible largely for being that kind of almost a hybrid linebacker defensive back type of player. And Vonn Bell goes to Carolina, another versatile defensive back that can kind of almost seamlessly switch with Jeremy Chinn in that secondary. Jeremy Chinn has been a safety for the Panthers the last few years that has been a blitzer. He's been a run defender. He's been a coverage player. He's played the nickel position. He's played free safety. He's played strong safety. Vonn Bell can do the very same. He can play in the box. He can play deep, right? So that is a very nice combination right there. And you also got Xavier Woods with Carolina as well in Evero's new secondary in Carolina. But the contract was shocking to me because it really wasn't too expensive. It's a 3-year, $22.5 million deal, $13 million guaranteed. That is not a lot for a top 20 safety in the NFL. Vonn Bell is a top 20 safety, and that's being conservative. I understand that safeties typically don't make a lot of money, and if they do, they're like Jessie Bates, where they're very rare, right? Like, in order to make a lot of money as a safety, you have to have a rare skill set. You have to be like really special at certain things. Like, rather you're the really good matchup guy, like let's say a Minkah Fitzpatrick, or you're like a really awesome box defender and blitzer like Jamal Adams. You have to have a very specific skill set to you, and you have to be a unique player. Vonn Bell is a good player, but he's not like special in any area, but he has no weaknesses. And that's why he was such a value for Cincinnati, and really not a well-known player, but just a good football player, man. In New Orleans, he was good. In Cincinnati, he was good. And now I believe he'll be good for the Panthers. And he gives them a lot of versatility and flexibility with what they do because of his skill set. So I think that's a phenomenal signing and a phenomenal value with Vonn Bell for the Carolina Panther fans out there. I think he's a good football player. Now, he's getting a little bit older, but he's still, I think, in his late 20s. So he should still have some good play left in him. So that's the Cincinnati situation. I'm honestly shocked that they went with Jermaine Pratt as the re-signing. Now, I will say, Jermaine Pratt does have a unique skill set. I'm a big fan of Jermaine Pratt. But the reason I thought he would leave is because they have Logan Wilson, who's a very good player, and I felt like they probably valued safety more than linebacker. But Jermaine Pratt's a very good coverage linebacker, and he's also, the guy that led the team in their run stop department as well. So him and Logan Wilson form a great tandem at linebacker in the box for Cincinnati, and they almost never come off the field. So that is one of the best linebacker tandems in the NFL nobody talks about. But Jermaine Pratt sticks around on a 3-year, $21 million deal. As I just said, Von Bell, 3 years, $22.5 million. Jermaine Pratt, 3 years, $21 million. So almost the same contract for a linebacker and a safety. Pratt is younger. Pratt just had his best season ever. So there is reasoning to that for Cincinnati. But maybe they feel like safety is possibly more replaceable for them than linebacker. But either way, it does suck to see that, because I think Cincinnati is in a spot where they're one of those contenders. So they're going to have to find a way to replace these two safeties that have been so essential to their defense and to their Super Bowl run a couple years ago and their defensive success last year. Now, Dax Hill is going to be a guy that I feel like takes over for Jesse Bates. Maybe Von Bell, he's got some versatility to him. He's a very good athlete coming out of Michigan, first-round pick last year. Maybe they spend another high-priority pick on a safety again this year. But yeah, Cincinnati's going to be in trouble if they can't figure out the situation there. But congratulations to Atlanta and Panthers fans. I think you guys got some great players. I love those players. I just love Cincinnati's defense. I love how smart they've been. They're very savvy. They're always in the right spot. They don't give up a lot of big plays. I feel like they've been very well coached. And it's also an example of just how well schooled those players are and how well they prepare. So I'm just a big fan of those players. So I want to let you guys know that I like those signings. Okay, so after that, let's open it up to the chat before we get to anything else. But welcome everybody that's been joining. We just discussed the Cincinnati safeties and Jermaine Pratt as well. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Looks like Zach Allen has just signed a contract with somebody. Let's take a look. Zach Allen, one of my favorite guys in free agency, defensive lineman, has agreed to a 3-year, $45.75 million deal that includes $32.5 million guaranteed. Zach Allen is reuniting with Vance Joseph in Denver. This was actually the prediction I had for Zach Allen. Not surprised that Arizona did not come up with a contract for him, given that I feel like the schemes between Vance Joseph and Jonathan Gannon are very far apart. So it felt like Zach Allen was going to find a new home, and he has with the Denver Broncos. I really like Zach Allen, and I think he's trending upward. I think he's going to be a very good player. And if Broncos fans want to be excited about this guy, J.J. Watt loves this guy. So if you want like a stamp of approval from an interior defensive lineman, J.J. Watt is probably that guy. And especially in this type of system that Vance Joseph runs, where he loves the 3 interior defensive linemen, very similar to what Fangio and Evero have been running there already. But Vance Joseph is a lot more aggressive with his tendencies in terms of blitzing and things of that nature. Zach Allen is an ascending talent. This guy is going to be very, very good. I think this is a fair contract. Might be a little bit of an overpay based on his past results, but it's very much in line with where I believe he will be and more people believe he will be down the road. So this is a little bit of a projection, but he had his best season of his career this past year. He was the highest graded Cardinal run defender last year. He was also a beast pass rushing. So he has very few flaws, and he's just starting to kind of come into his own as a big interior defensive lineman. I'm actually going to do a little bit more research in terms of statistics so I can kind of give you some backup of this proof of what I'm saying here. But just looking at the numbers in terms of Pro Football Focus, he had 34 pressures on 420 snaps. He had 6 sacks, 14 quarterback hits on the season, 6 sacks. So pretty good. And he's lined up on the left and the right. So some versatility there. But overall, I mean, him and J.J. Watt formed probably the best part of Arizona's defense last year, which was the interior pass rush. And what I think you're getting here, Denver fans, is you're getting a replacement for Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones is going to get a huge contract. But what I will say about Draymond Jones, I actually prefer Zach Allen. The reason I prefer Zach Allen is because Zach Allen's a more well-rounded player, and he's also younger. I think Zach Allen's about 25 years old, and Jones is, I want to say, 27 or 28 off the top of my head. Jones is maybe a better pure pass rusher, but Allen could grow into that, and he's a better run defender. So one of the biggest things the Broncos have actually struggled with is their run defense. I think Zach Allen will help solve that. So I like this fit. We've seen him progress in this system. It's a perfect transition for Zach Allen. It should be very seamless. And you're getting a young player that's just entering his prime on a 3-year contract. I think that's a great signing. Great signing for Denver. I wasn't a huge fan of the Mike McGlinchey signing. I was a big fan of the Powers signing. And just touching on that very quickly, Powers, great pass blocker, struggled not a lot, but he's not as good as a run blocker. But he does come from Baltimore, so they run the ball a lot. You would expect Denver to definitely, they wanted to hone in on protecting Russell Wilson. So pass blocking, always leaning into that more so than run blocking. But Powers is a big power guard that's going to be good for the Broncos. He was one of my favorites on the market because he was the best pass blocking guard on the market. And then also Mike McGlinchey, I wasn't a huge fan of that contract. I felt like it was a bit of an overpay given the guaranteed money was about $50 million and given his struggles in pass protection. But he is a very solid starting right tackle, and he's going to be an upgrade from what you've had in the recent past. You've struggled at right tackle for consistency. He is also a very good run blocker. At least he was in San Francisco, and he was heavily criticized in San Francisco from the fan base, and I feel like most of it had to do with the fact that he was on the opposite side of Trent Williams, and there was just a lot of pressure on him to perform up to the level of Trent Williams, and teams picked on him and started attacking him because they didn't want to attack Trent Williams. So Mike McGlinchey, not as big of a fan of that signing. Love the Power signing. Absolutely adore the Zach Allen signing. I think the Broncos have had a great start to free agency, doing exactly what I would have done and doing exactly what I thought Sean Payton would do, which is address the offensive and defensive lines in the line of scrimmage. So Broncos fans, you should be pumped about where your team's heading and how Sean Payton is addressing these needs. It's exactly to a T what I thought they would do. So maybe, whether you think I'm smart or not, maybe if you think I'm dumb, then fade me and fade the Broncos. But if you think I know anything at all, then maybe you like the move so far for Denver. Oh, what's going on, Ryan Shaw? What's going on, Brandon? Thank you guys for joining. Brandon says they can easily get a first for Judy. I disagree. I don't think they're going to get a first for Judy. I think they'll get a second probably. Ryan says they said everyone's available, Hamler, Judy, and Sutton. Yes, I could see Judy and Sutton being traded. One of them. I don't think both, but one of them. Jordan says 420 snaps. Now I know why Denver signed him. 420 pass rushing snaps. Sorry. Not all snaps, just pass rushing snaps. He actually played. So let me check. Zach Allen. Who did the Chargers sign? I got to check that out, bro. So Zach Allen had 660 total snaps, which is 79%. So that's a high percentage for a defensive lineman. I think Javon Hargrave didn't even play that much, and he got a huge contract. Brandon says his route running, hands, explosiveness after the catch. I'm a big Judy fan. I think Judy's a good player, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's a game changer. I think he's a good receiver. And I think he, into the future, maybe has a chance to become like a number one receiver. But I don't think he's like a top upper echelon receiver that deserves a first round pick. That's just my opinion, especially given the state of, like, maybe if he was a second year player, but I believe he's a third or a fourth year player. So that changes it. Okay, the Chargers signed Eric Kendricks. That makes some sense. Do I think the Patriots sign a who? Somebody said something. Oh, make a splash signing, asked Aaron. Depends. Yeah, I heard about Jonathan Jones. I touched on it earlier today, man. By the way, guys, if you already asked a question, please just reiterate it, copy and paste it into the chat because I may have missed it. But thanks, everyone, for joining. Okay, so let's talk about Eric Kendricks. Actually, maybe we'll wait on Eric Kendricks. Do we have the contract details? Because I like to know the contract details before I talk about it. Not that I'm a financial wizard when it comes to contracts, but I do like to know that. Eric Kendricks is signing with the Chargers. That's a good move on the surface, though. Okay, let's get to the next move. What do I have on my list here? I got a lot of things to go over. Ross wants me to talk about Sam Darnold as a 49er. I do not think we saw the contract details for that one either, but it's a one-year deal, so I'm pretty sure it's not going to be too financially significant. So let's talk about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a San Francisco 49er, and this is a fit that I feel a lot of people were into last year, the year before, maybe dating all the way back to when he was drafted. But Sam Darnold is a 49er now in the year 2023. And I think a lot of people are haters of Sam Darnold. I've never been a Sam Darnold hater. You know, he's been a New York Jet, so obviously I was never a big fan. And even coming out of the draft, I had Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson ranked above Sam Darnold, even Baker Mayfield. But Sam Darnold, I think, has actually grown as a quarterback last year in comparison to the previous 2 years. I felt like he hit a real low point in 2021, 2020. But in 2022, he had to step in for a Carolina Panthers team that had a shot at the playoffs. And Sam Darnold actually played pretty well during that stretch. And what you saw from Sam Darnold there was maturity as a decision maker. One of the biggest issues with Sam Darnold during his run with the Jets and his early days with the Panthers was he forced it too much. He tried to make things happen that were not there. Sam Darnold protected the ball better. Sam Darnold scrambled when he needed to, which, by the way, Sam Darnold is a deceptively pretty fast and mobile quarterback. He can run a little bit. And I'm not saying he's going to be a starting quarterback or he should be a starting quarterback, but for a backup quarterback, he's a former first-round pick with a lot of high-end skills. Like, the guy's got a pretty solid arm, a good release. He's got different arm angles to deliver the ball. He is creative, in the pocket at finding, little lanes to get through and to throw the ball on the move. He's definitely good at that. So Sam Darnold's skill set of what he does is almost like a lesser, in some ways, Jimmy G, but he's also better in other ways. Like, he's more mobile than Jimmy G. He can move better, but he's not as good or proven as a consistent decision maker. And I would say his accuracy is not as strong as Jimmy, or his release is not as strong. But what Sam Darnold's really creative at is outside the pocket stuff, off of play action stuff, moving. And that's a huge fundamental core thing of the 49er offense, of the Shanahan offense. So I see an option here for the 49ers if Brock Purdy's injured or Trey Lance is injured or is not the guy, that Sam Darnold could step in and run a team just as he did last year that's run focused, that's defense focused, and he can still win you games. When you look at last year, Sam Darnold, that's exactly what he did. So I'm going to actually look at his stats because I have no idea what they are from last year. But Sam Darnold was 4-2 as a starter. Okay, so that speaks to what I was talking about. 4-2. He was 4-7 the season before with Carolina. He had 7 touchdowns to 3 picks. And not the greatest completion percentage at 58.6, but he did have a high yards per attempt. So he was completing passes down the field. And the only thing I would say about Darnold is the accuracy thing. Still not the most accurate guy. Still not going to complete everything that is there on the platter for him. But again, athletically, he was a first-round pick for a reason. So rushing... What's the rushing department? 106 yards in 6 games and 2 touchdowns. 4.1 yards per attempt. So can run a little bit. So yeah, I like the signing. 1-year deal. I thought he was a high-end backup potential option for any team in the league. And I think he fits really well with Shanahan's offense because of his mobility. So I think that's a really strong option for the 49ers. Okay. Next up. What do we got? Oh, I got another prediction right, it looks like here. I am going off right now. So, Jameis Winston re-signed with the Saints. Don't think I really need to talk about that. Saints fans know who he is, Jameis Winston. He's signing a 1-year, up to $8 million contract. Good for Jameis. Jameis is a great character in the NFL and should be a strong backup for Derek Carr for sure. The Saints really love having good backup quarterbacks. They have for years, so that makes sense. The Texans are expected to sign former defensive back, one of my favorite safeties in the NFL, Jimmy Ward of the 49ers, sources say, giving new coach DeMeco Ryans a familiar face and a leader in the defensive backfield. That is the landing spot that I predicted for Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward will be a Houston Texan. Houston Texans fans should be excited about that one. I'm not sure what the contract is just yet, but Jimmy Ward, man, just love this guy. Like his leadership, his energy that he brings, his versatility. Throughout his career, he's played box safety or a strong safety role. He's excelled. He's played free safety. He's excelled. He's played nickel. Last year, he played a lot of nickel, and he excelled. He's basically played everywhere in the secondary except for perimeter corner, and he's excelled. So that speaks to how good of a football player he is, how smart he is, and obviously, he'll pick up DeMeco Ryans' defense like it's nothing. He won't even have to read the playbook because he already knows it off by heart, like the back of his hand, because he's been one of the leaders of that defense in San Francisco. It'll be interesting to see how San Francisco tries to replace this guy, but I do think, we saw this coming, right? Like, there's been some friction between Jimmy Ward and the front office of the 49ers. I don't know if it's Kyle Shanahan related or if it's John Lynch related or if it's just simply, hey, I want to go play for DeMeco again. That could be it, but there was some weird rumors about like him wanting to play safety instead of nickel last year, and then there was the whole thing about he made a big deal about Kyle telling him to play nickel or he was going to get benched for Hufanga and stuff like that. So there was a little friction there, but I think the Texans are getting an awesome player that's going to be a leader for a young secondary that has Stingley, that has Petrie. And if you enjoy Jalen Petrie, Texans fans, you're really going to enjoy Jimmy Ward because I feel like he's the original. So two safeties that are similar that can work off of each other in different ways. Last season, Jimmy Ward, what's up, guys, in the chat? He is a little bit older. He's 31 years old. But last season, he had 3 interceptions in 12 games and a forced fumble, 50 tackles. In terms of his coverage, he does get hurt a little bit. That's maybe one of the cons. His coverage, his passer rating allowed was actually the best it's been in 5 seasons of tracking the data, according to Pro Football Reference. And yeah, and that was at a position that he doesn't usually play, which is nickel. So I think for the Texans, I see him playing a box safety role maybe, or maybe even free safety. I think he'll be interchangeable there, but between him and Petrie, I wouldn't expect him to play nickel corner though. I think that's going to be Desmond King or someone else. So yeah, really good signing. for the Texans. I think that's huge for their defense. I'm just not sure what the contract is, but I'm sure it won't be a big deal. I'm expecting like a 2 or 3 year contract for Jimmy Ward to the Texans. Okay, what's next? What do you guys want me to talk about next? Rick says, anybody sign Bobby Wagner? Nope, not yet. Dallas Cowboys rumor there, but nothing yet. Rodrigo says, why nothing about the Patriots? Patriots haven't signed anybody outside of their own building, bro. They've re-signed a few key players. Jonathan Jones, McMillan at linebacker, Carl Davis. They re-signed James Ferentz. I think that's a really big one for Patriots fans out there. James Ferentz is one of the best reserve guards in the NFL. Played a lot of center. That's a guy that nobody really knows, but like Patriots fans know who he is. He's a good player. So yeah, Jonathan Jones was huge for New England to have back, but no one from the outside just yet. I would expect tomorrow New England to be pretty active. Typically, they're not active on the first day of free agency. Typically, they're not. Usually, Bill kind of sits back and he kind of assesses what the market is like, and then he goes from there and he picks his second-tier free agents. It was only really that 1 year in 2020 where he just, like, right off the bat, it's like Matt Judon, his, like, Nelson Aguilar, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Jalen Mills, like guy after guy after guy after guy. So, yeah, it's not too common that Bill is super active right away. Singh says, do Dean next? Oh, well, Jamel Dean simply re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I love Jamel Dean. He's my guy since day one. He is a BLV Hall of Famer on this channel because he's one of the guys that came out of nowhere that I was just, praising to the moon, that nobody even knew who he was when Tom Brady signed back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So shout out to Jamel Dean for getting paid. I know Richard Sherman loves him, and he's a really underrated player. I thought he would maybe go somewhere else just because of the amount of money he would get, the skill set that he has, the size, the speed, the length, and his ability, and what he's done is consistency. So good football player, and that's a huge re-signing for the Bucs. The fact that they got him back was huge. I didn't think they would, but it was a pretty team-friendly deal. Like, he did not break the bank, so it was a good move for the Bucs to get him back for sure. If they were going to re-sign any of their free agents this offseason, he was the one, I would say. So it's a team that's rebuilding, but he's still young enough where he can go through a full rebuild and still come out the other end and be a good player. So, and I really don't think with Jason Light there, I respect Jason Light. I think he's a good GM. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he'll maneuver his way, and I think the Bucs will be back in the next couple of years. It might take 2 years, 3 years, but once they find their next quarterback, probably not Baker Mayfield, but a rookie or something, or Kyle Trask, I think they'll be able to bounce back. That, with Tristan Wirfs there and Vita Vea there, I think they've got enough to work off of. Carlton Davis is still there. So that's a team that still wants to be competitive on defense. The Bears. Yeah, the Bears, man. We can talk about the entirety of the Bears if you want. We've got, so Nate Davis, Tremaine Edmonds, almost said Terrell Edmonds. And then they also signed who? I'm missing one. I'm missing one, am I? I heard they might sign Draymond Jones. Who did he leave $20 million on the table for, Rick? Did you hear who the team was that offered him that much? So the Bears. Who did they sign? Nate Davis, Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I talked about TJ Edwards earlier, but I'll talk about it again. Why not? So let's talk about the Bears. The Chicago Bears have gone shopping. This is a blockbuster Bear day for Chicago. They've signed 2 linebackers out of free agency and one of my favorite offensive linemen in free agency. Tremaine Edmonds is now the richest inside linebacker on a 4-year contract. I believe in NFL history, but at least in the NFL today, Tremaine Edmonds signed a big money deal. That deal is 4 years, $72 million, includes 50 guaranteed. It's the largest 4-year contract for an inside linebacker in the NFL. So Tremaine Edmonds, a player that's only 24 years old. That's insane. He is an NFL free agent. He is younger than me. He is 24 years old. He was drafted at 20 years old 4 years ago. He has played in the NFL for longer than some people's careers, and he is 24 years old. This is why he is getting this money. A lot of people will say Tremaine Edmunds, he's been good in the NFL. He has not been great yet, right? He's been inconsistent. He's shown flashes. Well, of course, he was 21 years old. He was 22 years old. He was 23 years old. So he's going to grow. And Tremaine Edmunds is a guy that I really feel like only people that watch the Bills on a regular basis know how good and capable he is, because Tremaine Edmunds is one of those players that he is so athletically gifted that Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, and company would ask him to do things that are simply irresponsible. Like, Edmunds, you're responsible to shoot this gap in the run game, but at the same time, you're the same guy that drops deep into our cover 2, and you're the same guy that's got to be able to cover the entire middle of the field with your long wingspan, and at the same time, you got to cover the tight end, and at the same time, we want to cover the running back. So, yes, Matt Milano is the guy that I think irreplaceable for Buffalo and has been phenomenal, but that's been a combination. Tremaine Edmunds is just a freak show. And because he's a freak show, he's asked to do probably more than responsible. You know, it's a little bit irresponsible on the part of the Buffalo Bills, but they're going to miss him because there's not that many athletes that can actually accomplish what he can do on a football field, whether it's blow up a run because of his size, or it's drop back into coverage because of his speed, or it's tip down a pass because of his length, right? And for Bears fans, you know, I'm not trying to say Tremaine Edmunds is Brian Urlacher, but when you look at the physical profile of Brian Urlacher and Tremaine Edmunds, they're very similar players. I mean, Brian Urlacher was special because he was 6'3" or 4. He ran like a maniac, and he was great in coverage. He was a safety that converted to linebacker that was also big enough to play the run. That's kind of Tremaine Edmunds in a way. And this is a defense in the Bears that are taking that Colts defense, right? The last year or so. Because they've got Matt Eberflus, and the Colts with Darius Leonard, right? They need linebackers to be able to flow sideline to sideline, to be able to play in coverage, to be able to play the run. Those linebackers are essential to their defensive scheme. So understanding that Edmunds getting this money does make sense. Now, at the same time, I want to see what their plan is at the defensive line, because some people may say that it's the icing before the cake, because I think the reason Leonard and Okereke, or however you say the guy's name, I love him, but I never know his name. The reason they're so successful is because that defensive line in Indy had DeForest Buckner, right? And had those big boys up front that could allow those guys to move and flow to the football. So the Bears are going to have to make sure that defensive line is on point, but they figured that this linebacker, as we've seen today, this linebacker class has gone like hotcakes. And I thought that would be the case. If you guys remember and recall my free agency preview, I was talking in depth about how much I loved the linebacker class in free agency. I thought it was by far the best and the deepest class I have seen in years. And in comparison, the cornerback class, the wide receiver class, some of the free agency groups this year were not nearly as good as years past, and not nearly as strong or deep as the linebacker group. We've seen just about every linebacker group or great player, like top 10 linebacker in free agency, all be signed today in the first day of free agency. I don't think that's a coincidence, because they're all really good football players, and because teams are lacking good linebackers. It's hard to find good linebackers in today's league, because linebacker is an incredibly hard position to play. It's incredibly hard to be able to cover all this play action madness. It's incredibly hard to stop the run. Linebacker today is harder than any position than linebacker's ever been, because there's so much like eye candy. You know, when you play Kyle Shanahan, he's got 13 people running back and forth. He's got the guy faking the handoff. He's got the play action boot. You've got the stretch run. You've got 14 plays off that. So linebackers have to deal with all that stuff in today's league. So that's why, to me, linebacker is so hard to find. TJ Edwards is the other linebacker that they signed. And he is a good football player. He's not nearly as good as Tremaine Edmunds. He does not have the upside of Tremaine Edmunds, who I do believe has the upside to become a top 3, top 1 linebacker in the league. He may never get there. Don't get me wrong. He may just be what he is forever. He might be, but he's only 24, so he can still get better. I expect him to around 26 to 28 years old on this contract. TJ Edwards is a good player, and TJ Edwards is going to be that complement. Right? TJ Edwards is smart. TJ Edwards doesn't really have any flaws. TJ Edwards is pretty good against the run, but probably a better like mover coverage player than I would say he is against the run. And also still fairly young as well. You know, let's just take a look at TJ Edwards because I don't know his age off the top of my head, but I want to say he's 26. Yeah, he's 26. So TJ Edwards has played 4 years in the league. 159 tackles last year, which is crazy. 130 the year before. He's not a big blitzer, but that's not really what they ask these linebackers to do in this defense. Edmunds would be that guy, right? I think Edmunds is the Leonard of this defense, if you understand what I'm saying. Edwards had one of his best coverage grades of his career this year, 82 passer rating allowed, which is strong for a linebacker. 7.5 yards per completion, which is pretty solid. And overall, when you look at his PFF grades, I know he's been very, very consistent in that regard as well. So he was ranked 10th in the NFL for PFF grade. And in 2021, he also had a very solid grade. In 2019, his rookie season, he had an elite grade, but he did not play as much. So he's been good in every year, and he's been consistent in Philadelphia. And as more of like the number 2 guy, I feel like he might even thrive even more because there'll be less pressure on him to do some of the things that maybe Philadelphia asked him to do. So I love the combo there. I do just worry a little bit about, are you putting the icing before the cake? And I do question the process of, well, you had Roquan Smith, who's arguably the best linebacker in football. If he's not the best, he's second best. So you had Roquan Smith already. Why did you get rid of him for a second round pick and not just pay him? But understanding that, it wasn't much more to get both Edwards and Edmunds compared to just Roquan. But I will say that Roquan, as he currently is constituted right now, is, a game-changing linebacker, and there's very few out there in the league. Roquan changes the defense. As we saw what he did in Chicago going to Baltimore, he changed the defense, like, overnight. So it's interesting, but I think it's good signings there. And then on top of that, you get Nate Davis, Bears fans. Nate Davis is a stud. I love Nate Davis. He was probably my favorite guard on the market given the age of him. I think he's 25 years old. So Nate Davis is a 3-year deal. 3 years, $30 million, 19.25 guaranteed. So 2/3 guaranteed. And I think it's a great signing. Nate Davis is a guy that's going to be excellent in this system. This is going to be a run-heavy offense with Justin Fields. You need guys that can move in space and be physical and run you over. And Nate Davis does exactly that. Like, this guy is tough. He comes from Tennessee. So, basically just exchange Derrick Henry running behind him to a quarterback. That's basically what Nate Davis is going to be doing for you. And he's in his prime. And I think it's a very manageable contract. When I see the guard contracts of Davis, Powers, and guys like that, and then I see the contracts of the tackles, I truly question why people would rather sign a tackle than a guard. Because I think guards are super undervalued in terms of the money that they get. Because I think guards in pass protection and even run blocking, like run blocking even more so, but pass protection, I think they're undervalued. Because, you know, whenever you talk to like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, they would always say like the interior is so important for protection. Now, Justin Fields might be a little bit different because he's like a mobility guy, but you want that interior to be secure so that you can step up into the pocket and throw, right? So I just feel like guards on the market are undervalued in general, and Nate Davis is one of those guys. I really like his style of play, and I think he's a perfect fit with his ability to move and also his toughness for what Ryan Poles is looking for in the offensive line. Of course, Ryan Poles is a former offensive lineman, so that should be his position of strength when it comes to acquiring players, and I think he hit one right here. So that's Chicago, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in so far. If you haven't already, make sure you Gronk spike the like button. That allows more people to see this video, more people to see the BLV. We can grow a bigger community of football fanatics just as we have right now in the chat. Shout out to Rodrigo. Shout out to Gaming Season, Ethan, Rahul, I hope I got that right. Ryan. Sometimes I just have trouble pronouncing words because I don't know. Davenport. Yeah, they cut Cam Dantzler. Davenport. Okay. Let's talk about Davenport. Oh, the Falcons also signed Kaden Elliss. I like it. That was an underrated name. Okay, let's talk about Marcus Davenport. Hold on. I just want to get some info ready about Marcus Davenport. That guy is interesting to me. What was the contract for him? Also, let me know about certain things. Did I talk about Garoppolo? I did talk about Garoppolo. But I could talk about him again because I was kind of sloppy in my analysis with him, to be honest. I went back and I watched it. I could do better on Garoppolo, so I'll talk about him because he's been the big quarterback signing. Okay. 1 year, $13 million. Okay, interesting. That's kind of what projected for him. I wasn't truly buying that, but I guess people are right. I thought he would maybe get more. Okay. He had 26 hurries, 34 pressures. How many games he play this year? 15. Okay. All right. The Minnesota Vikings have been basically cutting their entire defense until now. Marcus Davenport is a Minnesota Viking. Marcus Davenport was my number uno edge rusher in free agency. And it's because he still has a ton of untapped potential, and he is young. He is 26 years old. He's a former first-round pick, and he's had a lot of success in his career so far with the New Orleans Saints. Marcus Davenport is a very well-rounded player who is very good at setting the edge. He's extremely athletic, and he also is a good power rusher. I can see now talking about him why Brian Flores would like him for his defense. Because Brian Flores needs those edge rushers to be able to set the edge and stop the run. That's a Bill Belichick staple. And I think his athleticism was underutilized in New Orleans because a majority of the time he had his hand in the dirt. But I think Davenport can move really well. And sometimes with the Saints, you know, they would have a lot of these hybrid fronts and they would kind of blitz. And Davenport at times would drop back into coverage and things of that nature. So I think there's enough of that on tape where he could fit into a system of what Minnesota is going to be running. But first and foremost, I mean, Davenport is young, and Davenport 1 year, $13 million is a good contract. It's a prove it year for him. But if it goes well, you can sign him long term. If it doesn't go well, you've got really no worry about it. But when it comes to Davenport, he was very unsuccessful last year rushing the quarterback. He only had half a sack last year in 15 games and 9 starts. It was a very much a down year after really, you know, a 9-sack performance in 11 games the year before that and 16 quarterback hits. And his first 2 seasons, he had 28 quarterback hits in just 2 years. So that's pretty good, right? So last year was weirdly not a productive pass rushing year. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this. He did have 26 pressures, which just for reference was, and he only played 260 snaps, okay? So he did not play as much as he normally does, which could also speak to the sack total. But 26 pressures or hurries on 260 pass rushing snaps. When you compare that to somebody like Josh Sweat for the Philadelphia Eagles, he had 27 hurries on 415 pass snaps, right? Or you could look at Bradley Chubb, who went for a first-round pick. 30 hurries on 486 snaps. So the productivity per snap is there, statistically, for Davenport. When it comes to his pass rushing productivity grade, it's not fantastic, but it's solid. It's actually right in line with TJ Watt this year, which is pretty good, if you ask me. Also with Yannick Ngakoue and Carl Lawson, players like that. So yeah, did not perform his best this year, but did not play as much this year, and definitely has a lot more potential. So when you look at his snap percentages, in 2021, he played 64% of the snaps. In 2022, he played 50%. So a big drop-off for whatever reason. I think that had to do with the Saints rotation players that they have, because they do have good pass rushers elsewhere. Of course, they have Cameron Jordan. They also have Carl Granderson, who had a really good season this year. So there's a reason why he didn't play as much, because Carl Granderson had a breakout year. So that's my thoughts on Marcus Davenport. I think it's a good deal, low risk, high reward contract for at least 1 season. And I think on a fundamental level, although we've never really seen it in the NFL, he does seem to fit the system athletically. And I think he's got an upside to him that's worth investing in. So Marcus Davenport to the Vikings. Okay. More. Becca is in the chat. What's going on, my drunk friend? How are you? Draymond Jones, 3-year deal with the Seattle Seahawks. Well, they get their pass rusher. 3 years, $48 million. Shall we talk about it? Okay, let's first talk about Kaden Elliss. Okay. Let's talk about Kaden Elliss real quick. Kaden Elliss, the linebacker for the Saints, with 7 sacks in 11 games last year and over 70 tackles, has signed with the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons have been beefing up their defense, and largely with New Orleans Saints players. They signed Big David Onyemata for the nose tackle interior of their defense. They add Kaden Elliss to the second level of their defense, and they add Jessie Bates to the third level of their defense. 1 player in the secondary, 1 player at linebacker, 1 player on the defensive line. Kaden Elliss fits this system. He's played in it. He played in it last year. He broke out, and much like his counterpart, Marcus Davenport, he did not play the maximum amount of opportunities or snaps due to the competition at the position and the Saints having stacked talent on defense. Demario Davis, of course, being their number 1 linebacker. But what the Saints and now the Falcons, because they run the same system now, ask their linebackers to do is they are heavily involved as pass rushers and blitzers, and they have to get downhill and stop the run. And Kaden Elliss does that very well. He's explosive, and that's his number 1 trait. He can run through those gaps and get to the quarterback or stop the run. So I like this addition to the Falcons defense. I think it helps a position that maybe was an underrated need given their change in philosophy this offseason defensively. So that's Kaden Elliss, guys. Next up, who do we got next? Let's talk about Draymond Jones. Draymond. Okay. I just want to check something real quick with Draymond. Calais to the Jags, is that happening? If it is happening, let me know. Okay. All right. Let's go. Draymond Jones solves the interior pass rush problem for the Seattle Seahawks. Draymond Jones is one of the premier interior pass rushers on the market. After Javon Hargrave, a lot of people figured that Draymond Jones would be the second highest paid interior defensive lineman, and it is because of his ability to rush the quarterback. He ranked 11th in the NFL this season. Pressures for his position. He had 6.5 sacks on the Denver Broncos, was their primary source of interior pass rush, and has been for the last couple of years. Draymond Jones solves that number one issue of not being able to push the pocket for the Seattle Seahawks, allowing those edge rushers to also have an impact on the quarterback, collapse the pocket, make life difficult in the middle of the pocket for the quarterbacks opposing the Seattle defense. Draymond Jones is really going to help. He's going to replace Shelby Harris in this scheme and this defense, and it makes a lot of sense. He's a perfect fit for what they're currently doing. Seattle no longer runs their traditional four-man front Seattle scheme, cover three, all that business. They've really shifted into more of a 3-4 style in their fundamentals, and Draymond Jones, of course, has played in that his entire career, and I think is going to have success in Seattle. Now, the one thing I will say is he's going to be asked to be basically their primary source of pass rush. I would expect them to add to their pass rush in the draft. I'd also say that Nwosu was a really good add for them last year, so he's going to be a complement to those other guys. I'd expect them to hit edge in the draft as well. But Draymond Jones, 45 pressures last year. He had 33 hurries. And overall, good player for the last couple of years in terms of pass rushing. Now, the area that I would say he's not as good is in run defense. I think his run defense has been somewhat flawed, but at 26 years old, he's still young enough where he could improve that area of his game and get stronger in that capacity. And like I've said, the Seahawks have enough interior defensive linemen that are run defenders. They needed pass rushers. So I'm not too worried about that area of the Seattle defense. Although they weren't very good against the run last year, I don't think I'm super concerned. The other thing I would say about Draymond Jones is he's been successful over the last 3 years in a row in terms of sack numbers for his position. 6.5, 5.5, 6.5. It's been, very consistent for him the last 3 years. And this past year, he put up 6.5 in 13 games. The same number of what he did at 23 years old in 2020. So he's shown some level of consistency. 11 hits in 2020, 11 hits in 2021, 10 hits in 2022. So he's had success in basically all of his career. And last year, I'd also say this. Oh my goodness, Twitter playing music. I'd also say this. That actually scared me a little bit, got me the heebie-jeebies. But 81% of the snaps Draymond Jones played last year in comparison to 59% and 63% the year before. So when he was on the field, when he was playing in those games, he was playing. He played 81% of the snaps. So this is a guy that's going to play a lot for Seattle, and he's going to be productive for Seattle's pass rush, a big area of concern and a big area of need. So I think it's a nice contract. It's not too expensive, too crazy. And I know that a lot of experts were saying he had a very big market. So Draymond Jones to the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks fans should be happy that they've added a pass rusher here in Draymond Jones. Any receivers in free agency? No, actually no, which is shocking, I know, but it's the case. Where is Tessa? I don't know. Probably trying to find a new toque. What's up, Killin' Boys? How you doing, my man? How you doing, kill 'em boys? The Bills restructured contracts of Josh Allen and Von Miller, creating approximately $32 million in cap space. Wow. Putting those into future years. Okay. What else we got to talk about? With Jones now, what do the Seahawks do at 8? I expect them to get an edge rusher still. Corners, maybe an outside possibility. If I was Ryan Poles, how would I go about fixing the Bears' D-line? I liked Poona Ford for them. Frank Clark's out there. I definitely considered picking one in the draft. But I'll look at the free agency options just because I'm a nice guy for you. I'd probably avoid Clowney. I like Samson Ebukam. I like Arden Key. Dalvin Tomlinson's out there. Fletcher Cox. Probably not Fletcher Cox. He's too old. But Tomlinson could work. Maybe not the greatest scheme fit, but yeah. Those are some options that I don't mind. But they're running out. I will say that. I'm not sure what the trade market is like. Zadarius Smith could become available as well. Busboy asked what I think of the Patrick Peterson signing. Okay. Let's talk about it. So, it is a 2-year, $14 million deal. 5.85 guaranteed. Okay. The Pittsburgh Steelers have signed the legendary. Yes, legendary. And even though you're a legend, Patty Pete, you will not be wearing number 7 because that is reserved for one Big Ben Roethlisberger. But you signed a 2-year, $14 million deal worth 5.85 guaranteed. Pat Pete, the legend, the future Hall of Famer, is a Pittsburgh Steeler. And the Steelers earlier today lost Cam Sutton, but they got Patrick Peterson in return for at least this year, maybe the year after that. It is a 2-year contract, so you would hope. Patrick Peterson excelled last year. He had his best year in a long time in the NFL. And maybe it was an absolute fluke. And yes, he's been going downhill, but he played well last year. And he played well in a lot of zone coverage, which is, of course, what the Steelers love to run. So I think that there is some possible carryover, and it does make sense. You're not asking Patrick Peterson to convert back into a man-to-man shutdown specialist like he used to be in his 20s. This is later 30s, mid-30s Patrick Peterson, who actually has become more of a ball hawk, a guy that can actually take the football away, jump routes, make big plays in big moments. And of course, the Steelers love that from their cornerbacks. He's incredibly smart. He's been around the game. He's experienced. He's savvy. And I think he's a fair replacement for Cam Sutton. I don't think he's as good or as versatile as Cam Sutton is at this point in their careers, but he's a nice perimeter option with size and obviously experience, and he can help the rest of those guys around him grow as a leader. It is interesting from a timeline standpoint. Do the Steelers believe they're a contender coming soon? Because that would be the only sense this really makes. Because to me, the Steelers are still in that mediocre land. They're still an average football team. Pat Pete expressed that he wanted to go somewhere to win, which he also said the Bengals in that sentence. Obviously, the Steelers probably offered him a bit more money. That was on the table. So that was probably part of the decision making. And after losing Cam Sutton, they had to convert into a new player to sign. But I do wonder, like, if this is the best location for Patrick Peterson for a career standpoint. But I will say that it's a decent pickup, and it makes sense. He fits the system with how he's recently been playing. In terms of his grades, let's just take a look at his grades. So, Patrick Peterson. Hold on. I don't know these off the top of my head, guys. Sorry. Patrick Peterson did have a nice grade, 79.7 on 746 snaps. A lot of 60% reception percentage, which is pretty good. He had 15% forced incompletion percentage. He had a 77.3 passer rating allowed, which is strong. Let's see where that ranked. That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, he had his best season he had in a long time last year, I felt like. And it felt like in a lot of those close games, Patrick Peterson came up with a big play for the Vikings. He is 32 years old. I thought he was older, to be honest. He had 5 interceptions, 15 passes defensed, which is the second most of his career. And he had 66 tackles, which is the most of his career. So there you go. He successfully converted into a zone corner. More tackles than he's ever had. More interceptions, or at least second most interceptions he's ever had. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it, man. RR, why you playing with me, bro? Why you playing with me like that? Don't say that. Don't be saying stuff like that. By the way, Kaden Elliss got a 3-year, $21.5 million deal with 11 guaranteed. That feels like a little bit of an overpay based on his career so far. But based on last year, he played really well, and I know he's still young, so we'll see how that works out for the Falcons. Okay. Why haven't the Patriots signed anybody? I don't know. They're waiting for day 2 of free agency. Who knows? Okay, let's get back to work. What do we got here? Ethan Pocic, if you guys didn't hear, re-signed with the Cleveland Browns. He got an $18 million contract for 3 years. I think that's pretty darn good value for one of the better centers last year in the NFL and a very good fit for Cleveland. Shout out to Harley Quinn, who's back in the chat. I missed her. Hassan Ridgeway is expected to sign a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Texans. So just quickly on that note, Texans fans, you got another player from the 49ers. Wow, that's shocking. Hassan Ridgeway really was a depth player for the 49ers. I want to say he was drafted by Indianapolis. I'm going to look this up. I want to say he was drafted by Indianapolis, and he played for the Eagles, and then he played for the Niners. I am right. Wow. I should not know that. That is not something I'm bragging about. I should not know where Hassan Ridgeway has played his NFL career. But nonetheless, he was basically a depth player for them. And he has a chance to play some snaps in Houston. Maybe a larger role in Houston. He played 39% of snaps in San Francisco, mostly as a run defender. And I think that could be his role in Houston as well. They really struggled against the run. Best landing spot for Shaq Mason. The Baltimore Ravens. They need a guard. Ben Powers is gone. I think Shaq Mason is a perfect fit for their run scheme. So I would say Baltimore is the best fit. The Jets are converting $6 million of John Franklin Myers base salary into a signing bonus, creating 4.8 in 2023, maybe making room for Aaron Rodgers. Apparently, there is a report that the Texans and the Raiders both made serious inquiries about trading up with the Bears for the number 1 pick, but the Panthers made the most impressive offer. Okay. Moving on. Yeah, I know Hassan Ridgeway's history, I guess. So I talked about Nate Davis. I talked about Tremaine Edmonds. Alec Anzalone re-signed with the Detroit Lions. Solid player for them last year. They could probably use an upgrade from him, but he's been around that coaching staff for quite some time, that management for quite some time, playing in New Orleans. I'd say he's more so a depth linebacker. I think they maybe overpaid a little bit for him. 3 years, $18.75 million, considering what David Long got, and we're going to talk about him in a second. But he's serviceable. He's serviceable. The New York Giants, let's talk about the Giants, because they signed 2 players. And I'm going to butcher his name, but we're going to talk about my boy, Bobby Okereke. Let's do it. My favorite name in the NFL. Gronk, spike the like button, guys. Okay. It was a 4-year, $40 million. Okay. The New York Giants may have just solved their linebacker problem. The Giants have not had a linebacker forever. I don't remember the last time the New York Giants had a serviceable inside linebacker, off-the-line linebacker. They potentially have found one with the man that I can't consistently say his name, Bobby Okereke, or Okereke, or Okereke. I don't know, bro, but he's good at football. Bobby, that's what I'm going to call him from now on. Bobby signed a 4-year, $40 million contract. Half of that money will be guaranteed for Mr. Bobby himself. And he's a good player. He stepped up for Indianapolis last year with Darius Leonard out, and he made plays. He had his best season ever, some would say, in the Indianapolis defense without the presence of Darius Leonard. So if you think he's a Darius Leonard product, you would be mistaken. I have ranked him in the top 20 linebackers in the NFL from my preseason rankings 2 years in a row. So that just goes to show I've been high on him for the last 3 years, and there's good reason he's getting good money. 4 years, $40 million. Now, what does he bring? I think the interesting thing about this signing is that he's not the typical fit of what I would feel like the Giants or Wink Martindale would be after. I do question whether or not he's a perfect fit for this system given his size. He's 6'1", 235. He's smaller. Like, he's slimmer than the average Wink Martindale linebacker. Typically, Wink Martindale's linebackers are big, downhill linebackers, thumpers. But knowing the whole Giant front office comes from Buffalo, right? They probably wanted to invest in pass coverage and speed. And so I think that's going to put Wink Martindale into a coaching position where he's going to have to adapt a little bit with what he needs from the linebacker. So you're going to get more coverage ability from that position. You're going to get more range, more speed, all that, more playmaking ability. But you're going to get less downhill run stuffing ability, less pure strength, right, at the point of attack. But 151 tackles last year, 132 the year before. I don't know where that ranks, but I'm sure it's high in the NFL. No sacks, so that just goes to show you he's not a huge blitzer. that usually was reserved for Darius Leonard. He did have 2 forced fumbles on the year. So, I like him. He's a good player. I just question the fit a little bit. So, the coaching is going to have to come into play. But I will say, what the Colts had in him was a hawk for the football. Finding the ball and chasing it. And if you watch the Philadelphia Eagles game against the Giants, the number one thing they did not have was sideline to sideline speed, right? The Giants, with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles running game of what they have, you have to be able to have linebackers who can run. And that is what they have right here. So that's why I think they signed him. Because they know their primary competition is Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. And then secondary to that, it's Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, who are pass heavy. So it seems to make sense there that even if it's not a traditional fit for the defense, I will say though, Patrick Queen was drafted to Baltimore a couple years ago, and he is not exactly a perfect fit either for the Ravens in the history of their defense. So I like the signing. They needed to get a linebacker. They got one, and they got one that's going to help them against their biggest foes in the NFC East. Another player that they did sign, a low-key option, was Nunez Roches. Yes, I can say that name. Nunez Roches from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a depth defensive lineman in the interior for Tampa Bay. A pure run stuffer, just a big monster of a human being. Doesn't really do anything else other than just being a big, large, angry man that stands in the middle of a defensive line and does not allow you to run right up the middle. And that's pretty much his job. But he's decent at it. He's a decent role player, and he's a good, backup or even potentially borderline starter for the Giants. So, yeah. We've got Bobby Okereke. I forgot how to say his name now. And Nunez Roches. Caesar. Okay. So the Giants going with the funkiest names in the NFL. What else we got? Oh, you guys want to hear a name. You guys want all name team, bro? If you guys want all name team, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. The Cleveland Browns are going all name team with my boy Oscar. Obo Okoronkwo. I think that's how you say his name. we just call him Oscar, but Obo Okoronkwo is signing with the Cleveland Browns on a 3-year, $19 million deal with a chance to make $22 million and $12.5 guaranteed. This is one of my guys. Like, I've loved this kid, and I'm calling him a kid because I remember in my Ryerson days, shout out the former Ryerson University, which no longer the name exists. In my Ryerson days, this was the first edge class I ever scouted. And my boy Obo was a part of this class. And what stood out to me about Obo was his finesse pass rushing skill set. He reminded me immediately of Doomerville from the Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens, because he's a small defensive end. I think he's like 5'11 or 6 foot. He's short, but he's powerful for his size, and he's quick as hell. And I think he's really developed into a good player in the NFL and a guy that deserves like a starting role. Now, I can't even find him on the dang Pro Football Reference because they don't even call him Obo here. They call him Ogbonia. He played 17 games last year for Houston. He had 1 forced fumble, 5 sacks, which is the most of his career so far, 11 quarterback hits. He started his career with the Rams before breaking out with the Texans last year, and he will be playing in a system that is very similar to what Houston ran last year. He'll be playing with Mr. Schwartz in Cleveland, and with the Rams, he was a stand-up outside edge a lot of the time. And in Houston, he was hand-in-the-dirt guy. So now he's going to be hand-in-the-dirt guy for Cleveland. And just for reference, he's 27 years old. Again, shorter, 6'1", but 253. He's a strong package. So Ogbonnia Okoronkwo to the Cleveland Browns for a little pass rushing flair. He'll benefit from being on Myles Garrett's defensive line. Tessa is in the chat. What's going on, Tessa? How you doing? The Seahawks have signed Draymond Jones. How do you feel about it, Tessa? The Bears have signed DeMarcus Walker. Okay. Let's talk about it. The Bears. Da Bears. Nicholas Gill's Bears. The Bears' big spending day continues. They've agreed to a deal with former Titan DN DeMarcus Walker. Following a 7-sack breakout, Walker gets over $7 million per year over the next 2 years. Let's pull up his statistics here. Hold on, was he actually... Oh yeah, I remember that he was listed as an edge. Okay. DeMarcus Walker, unfortunately, is not all name team. Unfortunately, he does not make the cut, but he is a good football player. Okay. What was the contract again? I missed it. 2 years, 17 per, so about 14 million, I guess. The Chicago Bears are back at it. Just as we talk about, oh, they need defensive line. The icing before the cake. Well, here comes the cake, baby. I know Bears fans love their cake in more than one way. DeMarcus Walker is a Chicago Bear. DeMarcus Walker was an absolute monster for Mike Vrabel's defensive front in Tennessee last year. DeMarcus Walker had 7 sacks, according to Pro Football Reference, but 8 according to Pro Football Focus, depending on your preference. 16 quarterback hits on the year, which was a drastic jump from 7 the year before, which was also career high the year before. He's played in Denver, he's played in Houston, Tennessee, and now the Bears. The Bears are back, baby, in a big way. 7 sacks. And his pass rushing productivity really stands out statistically. He's a big dude. And the player you're getting is a guy that could play inside or outside. So he's a guy that on early downs you could see playing on the edge. And on third down or on passing downs, he'll play in the interior. So on a 4-man front, that's what you're going to see from DeMarcus Walker. And in Tennessee, he played mostly on the edge, as like a big edge, as you would call it, a jumbo edge, so to speak. Okay, so DeMarcus Walker had 32 pressures last year, and he had 7.9 PRP, pass rushing productivity, last year. 7.9 would rank 30th among all edge rushers. It was just below Arden Key, my boy, John Franklin Myers, also my boy, and Nwosu, Tessa's boy. So, pretty good numbers from DeMarcus Walker. The only thing I question is, it is a much different scheme going from Tennessee, where he was a breakout player, to Chicago. So as long as Matt Eberflus uses him in similar ways, I'm sure he'll be good. But I like the player, and he was also a pretty quality backup in Denver, even before Tennessee, before the breakout. The Texans year is kind of a outlier for him. That was a bad year for him. But the years before that, I felt like he was a good rotation player for Denver, and then kind of had that down year for Houston and bounced back in a big way for Tennessee. So he's in Chicago now. Who's going to the Jets? Tessa says them Seahawks are going to make them Niners fans change teams. The Hawks are going to rule the NFL. Is Rodgers going to the Jets? Not yet, but probably. New year, new Tessa, huh? What? You're actually in a free agency live stream and not a game stream? What do you mean? Quarterback Jacoby Brissett has drawn interest from the Bucs and the Eagles. Keep an eye out on that. If I was him, I'd go to the Bucs because I'd actually be able to start. Okay, who else we got? Sam Darnold, we did. The Commanders signed Cody Barton from the Seahawks, Tessa. So he is no longer in Washington State. He is in Washington, D.C. I don't really got much to say about Cody Barton. He's a depth linebacker pretty much. 1-year deal. Not a huge loss for the Seahawks. One move that is interesting is Andre Dillard. Signed with the Tennessee Titans. New England, for Patriots fans out there, was in on this. Apparently they were second, the runner-up for this contract. And interesting enough, they have a lot more cap space than Tennessee. So Tennessee must have offered him a really nice contract and were really high on him. But I was also encouraged to see New England was in on Andre Dillard. And this was a perfect signing for Tennessee. I tweeted it immediately. Andre Dillard was a former first-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles who basically got sat in Philadelphia because he wasn't great right away. And basically what happened in Philadelphia is that they had stud after stud after stud on the offensive line, so they never had to play him that much. And that's pretty much what happened. So Andre Dillard became like a very good backup, and he's played at guard, he's played at tackle. I expect him to play at left tackle for the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee desperately needed an offensive lineman. They got one in Andre Dillard. Does not have a huge sample size, but a ton of talent. And recently, when he's been asked to play for Philadelphia, he's played his best football. So that's good, right? That's a good sign. I would have been a fan of the signing if, as a Patriots fan, if he would have went to New England. So that just goes to show, like, I'm not just blowing smoke up your rear end. I think the signing's interesting. So he's a 27-year-old. Although, what the heck? Did he, like, not play or something in 2020? Because Pro Football Reference has him going from, he must have been an opt-out. That's what it is. He must have been an opt-out in 2020 because Pro Football Reference has him at 24 years old and then jumping to 26 like he never existed at 25 years old and then 27 years old. So that's interesting. Last year he barely played, but the years before that he played 35% and 29% of the snaps. So that's kind of a gauge of how much he's played. He hasn't played a lot. There's not a lot to go off of, but he was a high draft pick, first round pick with some talent. 27 years old. 22nd overall in 2019. Ha ha! Clinton Dix is all name team all time. Tessa says Rodgers is going to the Jets and Derek Carr is on the Saints next year. It's going to be fun and the Seahawks will rule the NFL. Rule is a little strong, Tessa, but I do think they're going to be good. Yeah, Gino is back. Dude, the Bears are going to be scary this year. Watch out for the Bears, says Kenzie Easton. Thank you for joining the chat, by the way. I don't know about scary, but I think they'll be much improved. What else we got? Is that a signed Eagles ball behind you? Big Al would probably gave it to me. No, he didn't, but it is. It's Brian Dawkins, the Wolverine. See? Brian Dawkins signed football. Pretty cool, hey? You should do a March Madness stream. Maybe for patrons and YouTube members. Bird says, what's up? Great stuff. Clicked on so many. What are you talking about, Bird? I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. Okay. What else did I miss? I've gone over most of the things so far. Marcus Epps signed with the Raiders. We could talk about that. We also got to talk about Jimmy again. And then David Long. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Alex Singleton also signed a 1-year deal or 3-year deal for $18 million with the Broncos. He played really well last year for Denver, so that's a good re-signing. I will say that might be a little bit rich, but it's a good re-signing. I just want to put down Eric Kendricks because I didn't talk about him yet either. I don't know what his contract is. If you have any questions, let me know. Bird says, my bad. I clicked on a bunch of free agency videos, and this is by far the best one. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. We're going to continue rolling here. So let's talk about the Raiders. I also want to get Jimmy G's contract info. If we're going to talk about this, let's do it right. How's everyone doing today? Everyone doing good? I've missed some of you guys in the chat. Some of you guys don't show up in my comments. Leave me a hi every once in a while if you see my video. Just say, hey, Mitch. You don't even have to watch the video. I don't even care. Just say, hey, Mitch. Just leave a nice little comment. Say, Tessa could say, hey, I bought a new toque. Like something like that. You know what I mean? Okay. Jimmy G is getting a 3-year, $67.5 million, 34 guaranteed. Okay. And I believe it's 16 or 17 less than Derek Carr. All right. The Las Vegas Raiders have made a couple moves today, but the biggest is Jimmy Handsome is going to Las Vegas. Yes, Jimmy G will be bringing the sexy back to Las Vegas. Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback for Josh McDaniels. He is the chosen one for Josh, and they both reunite in Las Vegas with the Raiders. That is his new QB for the Raiders. And let me tell you this, guys. Jimmy G is an upgrade, Raiders Nation. Raider Nation, sorry. I don't want to make you mad. Raider Nation. Jimmy Garoppolo is an upgrade over Derek Carr for Josh McDaniels. I did not say he's an upgrade for the Raiders. I did not say he's an upgrade generally. But Jimmy Garoppolo playing for Josh McDaniels in the McDaniels offense in comparison to Derek Carr playing in the Josh McDaniels offense, that is upgrade Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? What does Jimmy Garoppolo do? First of all, Jimmy Garoppolo is a heck of a teammate and leader. Everything you hear about Jimmy Garoppolo is how much his teammates love him. Everywhere he goes, how much charisma, and people just, they love him. He's just got a positivity to him. He's got a vibrance, an aura to him. People love the guy. And there's a reason the Niners have gone far, because teams play for Jimmy Garoppolo. And there is something to that, right? So that's first and foremost, leadership. Jimmy has it. Jimmy has a presence. Players love him. Secondly, What does Jimmy Garoppolo do well from a physical standpoint? Well, we know that Jimmy Garoppolo does not move very well. He's definitely not a mover, but neither was Derek Carr. They're similar. I would say Carr is a better mover. He can move around the pocket a little bit better, navigate the pocket a little bit better, throw on the run better for sure. But what does Jimmy do better in terms of the presence? In the pocket, Jimmy Garoppolo is tough as nails. That's something that Jimmy Garoppolo does not get enough credit for. Jimmy is extremely tough in the pocket. He will take a lot of hits. There's a reason Jimmy Garoppolo has been injured as often as he's been injured, because he takes too many hits to make passes and make throws. And part of the big frustration with Josh McDaniels last year with Derek Carr, I can assure you, was that Derek Carr was too quick to dump the ball down, too quick to take the check down. Jimmy Garoppolo will not do that. If he has a guy open, Jimmy Garoppolo will throw the ball to him, whether that's 5 yards down the field or 25 yards down the field. And I'm sure he learned that from Tom Brady, because he did learn from Tom Brady. Jimmy Garoppolo was not just successful with Kyle Shanahan. He actually did go undefeated with the 2016 Patriots, if you recall. It was only for a short sample size, but he was very good when he played very early in his career with Josh McDaniels. And if you want a reference point, go back and watch the first half of the Miami Dolphins game. I want to say it was week 2 of the 2016 season. Now, one of the negatives of Jimmy Garoppolo in comparison to Derek Carr is Jimmy Garoppolo has played on much better teams. He's had much better rosters overall and defenses than Derek Carr. So in comparison there, because that's what we're doing here, we're comparing these two. Garoppolo has had more help. He's had better coaching, better defenses, all that. Protection-wise, I think it'll be generally similar to what he's had. The Raiders were actually a deceptively pretty good offensive line last year, especially in the run game. But what I do think is going to be beneficial for Garoppolo is play action. He's good at that, and McDaniels loves to run play action. Also, throwing in the middle of the field. Throwing in breaking routes, Jimmy Garoppolo is excellent at throwing in the middle of the field, in between the numbers. Jimmy Garoppolo is not good at throwing deep down the field. He's not good at throwing outside the numbers. But I will say that McDaniels oftentimes has preferred to manufacture offense in the middle of the field. He is not generally a very much vertical offensive schemer. And at the same time, it's similar to Shanahan. And at the same time, Davante Adams helps any quarterback throw the ball down the sidelines because he's Davante Adams and he's open by 5 yards. So that helps. So you've got Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller in the middle of the field, and even Josh Jacobs for that matter. I think those guys are going to feast. I think especially Hunter Renfrow is going to have big stuff with Jimmy Garoppolo because he's got a quick release. He's really good with his timing and his toughness in the pocket, and he can get the ball there quickly. The biggest problem with Jimmy Garoppolo is his health. He gets hurt, and that's been his biggest issue. Every season Jimmy G plays, he's been good. He's been, I would say, average or above average every year that he's played in the NFL. His biggest issue is availability. So if you're going to have Garoppolo as your quarterback, you need a good backup. That is basically what happened with him in San Francisco. They got fed up with his availability. They did not get fed up with the player. Sure, maybe they felt like they could go from just good to elite, but they got fed up with the availability of the player. That's something that Derek Carr has been a lot better at. And that's probably where the difference in money lies. And the difference in contract has been, I think, $16-ish million per year. Derek Carr is going to make 37.5 on average, and I think, so about 13-ish million. 13-ish. I think Garoppolo is making about 24. So there's a big difference there. Now, if you do that math, that's one, 2, or 3, depending on what you want. But that's like one top-tier defensive player, or that's like 2 good defensive players or 3 pretty good defensive players, like whatever you want to do. It allows them to sign somebody like Marcus Epps. But I want to give you that as a bottom line point. Jimmy Garoppolo allows you to save money at the quarterback position, has been productive, about the same as Derek Carr, has won more games more consistently than Derek Carr, is a good leader. You got to worry about the injuries, but he knows the system, he's familiar with the system, and I'm using all of my fingers to possibly get all of these points across. So, yeah, Jimmy G. I've always liked Jimmy G, of course. Soft spot because he was a Patriot quarterback. At one point, I thought he was going to be the future of our franchise. Never ended up happening, but he may be the future, or at least the short-term future, for the Las Vegas Raiders. And the good thing about Garoppolo is he's about as good of a bridge quarterback as you can get, because you can still draft a quarterback with his contract. It's not too crazy to still draft a quarterback with his contract. And then going on with his stats, comparing it to Derek Carr's stats. So last year he played 10 games. He was 7-3. He had 16 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. He had a 103 passer rating, and he had a 67.2 completion percentage. Now, obviously, he's playing with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. Good weapons, but the Raiders have good weapons too. Good play caller, but the Raiders have good play caller too. And honestly, play caller was not the issue last year. If you watched the Raiders, you know what I'm talking about. Derek Carr, on the other hand, had one of his worst years in a while. Derek Carr was one of the better quarterbacks I felt like in 2021 and 2020. I felt like he was a top 12 quarterback. Last year, he did not play well. He had a 60.8 completion percentage, 24 touchdowns to 14 picks, 3,500 yards, 86 passer rating. Very average to below average numbers. So we'll see how Jimmy does, but on the surface, this could be an upgrade for the Raiders for a lot less money. So I think this is a great move by the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, on top of that, they signed a safety. One of the primary needs for the Raiders is secondary this offseason, and they've gone with their first move, Marcus Epps from the Philadelphia Eagles, who I feel will play a little bit of a Patriots fans out there, Patrick Chung type of role. He is more of a box safety who is very strong against the run and not the most athletically gifted in terms of speed, but physical and a good box player. 94 tackles last year, which was the most of his career. 17 starts, 1 forced fumble, 6 passes defense. Overall, his coverage numbers are not pretty in terms of the advanced stats on Pro Football Reference. I'm going to double check with the PFF stuff. But overall, this is like an upgrade at the strong safety spot. Last year, you guys had no strong safeties. Like, Jonathan Abram got cut after, I don't even know how many games. So, at the very least, he's an upgrade there. He started for a Super Bowl caliber defense in the Philadelphia Eagles. And I could see him playing, more of like a box safety, extra guy against the run, maybe cover the occasional tight end, that type of thing. That's kind of what I think he is. So looking at Philadelphia, Marcus Epps. Yeah, his coverage grade was not strong. His passer rating was weak, allowed. And that's mostly due to touchdowns. He allowed 6 touchdowns last year. I don't know how much touchdowns, when you're looking at touchdowns and things like that, I'd have to look at the individual play to actually tell you if it was good or bad. So I can't honestly give you an assessment there either way. But when I watched him, I didn't get the sense that he was out of place or anything. I felt like he was a solid player. I think he's a solid starting safety. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's elite, but he's good, especially against the run. So, and a good tackler who sets the tone. So that's what you're getting in Epps. But the big move was, and Big Al could tell you, who's just in the chat now. Thanks for joining, Big Al. He could tell you about Epps, who was on the Eagles last year. But Jimmy Garoppolo to the Raiders. I like that move. Okay. What else we got? Do we got any new signings? I also got to talk about David Long. Big Al, you've missed basically the entire stream, bro. Where you been? Right here, Kenzie says, dude, I love Marcus Epps as an Eagles fan. It hurt that they took him. Okay, there you go. There's Eagles fan recognition right there. Appreciate it. If you guys are fans of certain players and certain teams, always let me know your opinion. I love to hear the fan perspective because you guys pick up things that I may not pick up. Because you guys probably listen, you know your team. So it's always good to hear that. I try my best, but some things I won't know. Somebody tweeted, classic Belichick, if the Jets get Rodgers, Patriots will finish last in the AFC East. And then some guy trolled him and said, classic Belichick, always finishing last in the AFC East. Classic. Patriots fans are such dummies, bro. I mean, I love you guys, but you guys are such idiots. Okay. What else are we looking for? David Long. This might be the best value signing of the entire day. Yeah. Obo was solid money. I wouldn't say it was a super value because I think he's kind of a role player. Like a good role player. He's a good pass rushing role player, but it's a solid signing. I like him. Okay. David Long. Why am I pulling up the Rams David Long? I want the other one. They both were drafted in 2019. That is extremely confusing. Okay. He is 26 years old. Okay. All right. The contract, 2 years, $11 million. Okay. The Miami Dolphins have a linebacker for the middle of Vic Fangio's defense, David Long. This might be the biggest value signing of the day. David Long is a very well-rounded linebacker that has very few weaknesses, but the number one thing this guy does very well, at a smaller stature of 5'11", this man packs a punch. He was actually ranked first in average depth of target for the tackle position. I messed that up. He was ranked first for the average depth of tackle for the linebacker position. There you guys go. Corrected myself. David Long is a great tackler. He's very physical. He can come down and pack a punch, and he also can cover. That's great. And it's 2 years and $11 million. You didn't have to break the bank for Tremaine Edmonds. You didn't have to break the bank for any of these other linebackers that got paid. David Long is up there. I would say at least a top 30, if not top 20 linebacker in this league, in my opinion. One thing that he has struggled with is availability. In his career, he has never played a full season. And that might be due to his size. 14 games in 2019, 14 games in 2020, 10 games in 2021, and 12 games in 2022. He had 2 interceptions in back-to-back years, 21 and 22, which shows his ability in coverage. He had the most tackles of his career with 86 this year. And in coverage, The last couple of years, he's allowed a 61 passer rating and a 74 passer rating with an average yards per target of 4.9 and 6.3, which just shows you he's a good cover player, and he's also a good run defense linebacker because he was on the #1 run defense in the NFL. So David Long's very underrated, and I think this is a great signing, especially for a team that is going to be playing a lot, less people in the box. Due to Vic Fangio's scheme, he likes to play a lot of two safeties deep, which means there's less people for run defense. But when you have a guy like David Long, who's good against the run, that's going to help with that, right? And you also sign Jalen Ramsey, who's good against the run, good tacklers. That helps you be able to get away with players being, a little bit more leaning towards the pass coverage department. So yeah, good signing for Miami, upgrade at linebacker, and a nice partner for Jerome Baker for sure for the Dolphins. Okay, I think that's it right now. Did I miss anything, guys? Rodrigo says Howard and Ramsey are waiting, Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Okay. Final thing I want to touch on is Eric Kendricks to the Philadelphia Eagles. Or not the Philadelphia Eagles, the LA Chargers. I don't know why I said the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay. I still haven't seen the contract, though. Yeah, I haven't seen it. Okay. Hold on, guys. Gronk, spike the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't, if you're new. Okay. Linebacker, Eric Kendricks, the vet, former All-Pro, has signed with the LA Chargers. This signing is to do one thing and one thing only. Yes, Eric Kendricks is well known for his ability all around throughout his career, but he is getting a bit older. He is in his mid-30s now. He's about 33, 32. The one thing he does very well still is run defense. The Chargers have struggled with defense against the run for quite some time, especially under Brandon Staley. And they have not had linebackers with size or the ability to stop the run. Eric Kendricks was the 14th highest graded run defense linebacker in the NFL this past season. He's also a capable pass rusher. He's not as good in coverage as he used to be. He's a little bit slower in the feet. He's not able to, move as well as he used to. But still a very good player. Good enough to start for an NFL team. At 30 years old, correction, he had 137 tackles, which is the second most of his career. 143 the year before in 17 games. And had 5 sacks in 2021, which was the most sacks of his career. So 2 years ago. Eric Kendricks, I just think is there to stop the run, man. And I think he's fairly familiar with their system there, being that he was coached by Zimmer for many years. Given the state of that defense last year, it was hard for anyone really to look good in that system. So there is the upside, the positive note of saying, well, yeah, maybe he's declining. Maybe he's getting a little bit older. Maybe he's not quite the same player he used to be, but he played on this really bad defense that was poorly coached. If he goes to a defense that's a bit better coached, if he goes to a defense that needs him to perform more specific tasks and play in a system that he's more familiar with, that would probably help him. So that's kind of what I'm thinking here. But yeah, like the proof is in the pudding of the coverage stats. Like 100 in passer rating allowed isn't great. It's not bad either. It's not great. Could be better. And his coverage grade was also not fantastic. It was pretty below average. But as a player that is needed for a defense that has struggled extremely against the run, this was a much needed add. I'm not aware of the contract at this moment, but I do think that he can fulfill a big need for the Chargers defense. So that's what the Chargers are looking at. A big run defense linebacker in the vet Eric Kendricks. That is it, guys. I think that's pretty much it for tonight. I don't know if there's going to be that many more signings. I may be releasing some separate videos from this live stream as well as earlier live stream. And then we're going to be back at it tomorrow, man. Probably 2-a-days for the next couple of days here on the BLV with all the signings that are going to take place. I'm looking forward to tomorrow because hopefully the Patriots, Bill Belichick gets out of wherever he's hiding and he makes some moves. But I appreciate everybody watching, and I hope everybody Gronk spiked the like button and subscribed. Also, please don't forget to Gronk spike the notification bell. Once you've subscribed, make sure the notification bell is on so that you get notified when I go live for the next live stream, for when I'm discussing all the free agency breakdowns, signings, trades, and everything. I'm going to be live. So thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch. Appreciate you, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace.